Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. Today we're going to talk about an old fantasy cartoon. It seems like it's sort of fallen between the cracks. I don't hear people talk about it too much these days, but they really should because it's pretty dang good. It is called The Flight of Dragons from 1982. The story begins with a mountain. The sun behind it. We zoom in and see a man in robes, and he is calling for Gorbash. And a dragon flies towards him. He mounts the dragon, and standing on its back, they fly. Soon we see they are flying towards a whole flight of dragons. You see what I did there? There was a time, they say, between the waning age of enchantment and the dawning age of logic, when dragons flew the skies, free and unencumbered. And this shot is followed by one dragon flying towards the viewer and breathing fire before joining the other dragons. On that troubled earth below us, confusion and chaos reign. All mankind is facing an epic choice: a world of magic or a world of science. Cue the music. Flight of Dragons, sung by Don McLean. You probably know him from American Pie. Wonderful voice. And written, the song, by him and Maury Laws, and the title. So this is how we start a really wonderful 1980s fantasy animated film produced by Rankin-Bass. If you've seen their films The Hobbit, Return of the King, or The Last Unicorn, you know the style and you also know the quality. The film mixes this fanciful animation with a really excellent cast. I'll call them out as we proceed through the story. And of course, yes, there are going to be spoilers in this one. Just be aware. Now, the story is based on The Flight of Dragons by Peter Dickinson, with some elements taken from The Dragon and the George by Gordon R. Dickson. Romeo Muller wrote the screenplay. He was a veteran of Rankin-Bass Productions. He always had a talent for the fantastic and the wonderful. The dragons that we've been watching fly about and finally land in a peaceful woodland setting. We see a swan paddling along on a gentle stream, fairies fluttering around its head. The fairies settle on its back, and all is well until they get a dunking from a mill wheel. Now, the swan is stunned, but the wizard that we saw before, he wades out to aid it. And really, it's a nice, concise opening to the film. Establish the wizard and his personality, establish the existence not only of dragons, but other fantasy creatures. Rankin-Bass was always quite good at their openings, of setting everything up quickly. Now, holding the nearly drowned fairies, the wizard turns to yell at the millers about their machines, crowding out magical folks. He sets up kind of the basic idea of the film here, that logic and magic must coexist. And this really gets down to the conflict, I think, of the current age that we're living in. We learn now that he is Carolinus, the Green Wizard, voiced by Harry Morgan, best known as Colonel Potter on MASH. He has a great voice for a wizard, and he uses it well in this film. Now, he and the millers argue back and forth, and when they start throwing rocks at him, he decides to cast a spell and make their mill wheel disappear. And there's a lot of, sort of speaking Latin and the whole thing. And then it sort of fizzles. And he walks away, head down, laughed at by the millers. In his tower, his daughter, Melisande, tells him he needs rest. But he explains to her that the magic simply was not there. Something must be done. He is going to summon the other wizards. Now, Melisande is voiced by Alexandra Stoddart. She voiced Dazzler in Pride of the X-Men and was also in an episode of MASH playing a character who wasn't really very cool, if memory serves. Does a nice job in this film, though. While Melisande summons the Silver Owls to deliver the messages, a great dragon barges in, exclaiming that he and young Gorbash will handle the millers, devour the lot of them. But no, he is told this will accomplish nothing. Instead, Carolinus is going to summon his brother wizards to the Temple of All Antiquity for their first meeting in 4 centuries. Now, this dragon, Smurgle, is voiced by James Gregory, legendary as Inspector Luger on Barney Muller. This is a really pretty film, by the way. Just look at the art there. And it's a style of fantasy art that doesn't seem too common these days. Things seem to have gone in a couple different directions, but we feel like we've sort of, at least in terms of mass appeal, lost that sort of fairy tale feel to things. We now meet his brother wizards in turn, starting with Solarius, the Blue Wizard, whose domain is the depths and the heights. He's voiced by Bob McFadden, who may be best known to modern nerds as the voice of Snarf on the Thundercats. No, he does not sound like Snarf in this cartoon, and he does a few different voices in it. He was also Milton the Monster. Anybody remember that one? Then there is the Golden Wizard Lo Tai Zhao, voiced by Don Messick. He is the Lord of Light and Air of Healing and Transcendence. And Don Messick, legendary, voice artist for cartoons. And finally, Omadon, the Red Wizard who rules the Devil's Domain and black magic. He is voiced by the great James Earl Jones. And if you want an evil voice in the early 1980s, you cannot do better than Darth Vader himself. And he does an exceptional job in this movie. So the wizards gather to discuss the dimming of their magic powers. Carolinus' plan is thus create a last refuge of magic, a place for enchanted beings to dwell, hidden from the world of science with the mists of invisibility, basically a magical preserve. But Omadon is not impressed. Carolinus explains here that man cannot do without magic. Man patterns his inventions on the stories of magic. Our armor imitates the invulnerable dragon hide, aircraft, the flight of fairies, TV and radio, the crystal ball. The blue and gold wizards agree. But Omadon refuses. He will not concede defeat to the modern world and hide away in a magical realm. One of the things you want to do with animation is create a strong synthesis of voice and image. And boy, they do this very well in this cartoon. And they, again, pick such wonderful, evocative voices to do it with. Omadon proclaims that he has weapons the others do not. Fear rules man. He will use that fear to drive man to use his science to destroy himself. And this is such a great image, and the lines so powerfully delivered by Jones. And when he says he will use our science against us, he is not joking. Omadon bears some resemblance to Saruman from Lord of the Rings, and indeed, the four wizards kind of resemble the wizards from Lord of the Rings as well. There's a few places where it looks like there was some inspiration at least. Now, Omadon says that while their powers diminish, his shall grow, because he shall make man his. They will desire his black magic and what it can give them. This he swears on his red crown, source of all his power. That, folks, is a plot point. Key here, though, is Jones's performance, excellent speech, and accompanied with excellent graphics. The only way the other wizards can stop this is to invade Omadon's realm and steal his crown. But this they cannot do. Antiquity bars the Magic Brothers from warring upon one another directly. So they will have to inspire a quest to steal the crown in another person. Gather allies who will fight for their cause. In other words, they need to put a party together for a quest. Well, who will Carolinus send on this quest? First, his friend, the knight Sir Oren Neville Smythe. Also, his young dragon friend, Gorbash. But a magic quest requires 3. Who shall be the third? Carolinus says that he will let Antiquity choose. The other wizards provide magic items, the Shield of Saturn and the Flute of Olympus, to help with the quest. And this brings us to the next chapter of the story. That night, Carolinus asks Antiquity to guide him, and a glowing tree springs from the ground and speaks. Seek to the future a man who descends from great Peter, the Dragon Master, he who tamed the dragons and taught them to speak. The man they seek is the first of the descendants who is a man of science. They will find this champion in the 20th century. And so Carolinus seeks this man by gazing into the limpid pool of time, and he sees a modern city, and we hear a man, voiced by Larry Storch, saying, "Dragons and wizards and dungeons and princesses. speaking here to Peter Dickinson, who is voiced by the great John Ritter, who has invented a game called The Flight of Dragons. He just needs $2,000 to manufacture it and is seeking a loan from this pawnbroker. He was writing a book by the same name, but he had to stop because he's holding down 2 jobs already, just didn't have time. So basically, Mr. Dickinson is broke, but he's always been fascinated by dragons. He believes they once really existed, and he wants to know how they could fly, how they could breathe fire. And the game elements definitely harken back to Dungeons and Dragons, which was making a big splash, especially among the younger set at this time. Well, Gorbash is not impressed with this 777th generation from Great Peter, but Carolinus trusts to the wisdom of antiquity, and then he notices that the pieces on his game board resemble all of them, the wizards, Melisande, Gorbash, the dragon. So perhaps this will work out after all. So he transports himself to Peter, taking the place of his piece on the game board. And from there, he brings Peter first onto the game board and then blasting away into the mythic past. As they fall from the sky, Smeargle catches them on his back, and Peter is amazed and delighted. He's talking to a real dragon. He is writing on a real dragon. The artists do an excellent job creating this sense of wonder for the audience. This, as with Rankin-Bass's Hobbit, is from that kind of subgenre I like to think of as cozy fantasy. Does not have an edge. It's warm, it's inviting, it speaks to the inner child. Doesn't mean it doesn't have danger and things like that, but it's not, barbarian fantasy like Conan. It's not that kind of thing. On the ground, Peter meets the Princess Melisande, and he exclaims that when he carved that piece, he made her into everything he ever desired in a woman. And then realizes he just said this in front of her father. But Carolinus takes no offense. There's nothing offensive about love, he says. And Peter speaks in terms of love, not lust. Love is the important factor here. We're presented with a world in which there are 2 ways to get things done, magic and science. But these are merely tools. Perhaps men practice their science without love, but Omadon practices his magic without it as well. It's not the tools that are to blame. It is how men use them. Well, next, Gorbash is introduced to Peter. Gorbash is excited about finding some gold. We're going to learn why he's excited about that in just a moment. Now, in this portion of the cartoon, we start to learn how dragons function. For example, they can fly despite being too large because they fill themselves with hot gases. By releasing them, they descend, so basically like a hot air balloon. It is at this point that Smeargle comes falling from the sky and must be rescued by Gorbash. He has lost his fire. We learn that the other dragons have turned against him because he would not denounce Carolinus and join Omadon. Omadon has cast a spell on the dragons, a whole flight of dragons now to protect his crown. Good storytelling. We get a little bit of action, but also a reminder that the clock is ticking. Keep up the pressure to complete the quest. A cozy fantasy can undermine itself by being too cozy, and I don't think this one does that. There's going to be some really, really cool scenes as we proceed through it. Well, another dragon lesson now. Because they have a tendency to ignite bedding, dragons must sleep on a soft metal, thus the piles of gold that they use as beds. And this highlights the confluence of magic with logic, explaining things which seem unexplainable. Carolinus then begins to explain what's happening to Peter, while Omadon watches them through a scrying pool. Omadon laughs at the idea that this man will be the one to stop him. Famous last words for a villain. Still, he worries because antiquity was involved. So he sends Briarg, his dragon, to fetch Peter. Now, we now learn here also that Peter was a science student until he became bored with it. He decided to write a book about dragons, The Flight of Dragons. In fact, Carolinus has a copy in his library, even though Peter hasn't finished it yet. He has a library of unfinished books. At this, Carolinus presents Peter with the shield of Saturn and the flute of Olympus. Peter protests. He is no warrior. He's clumsy and awkward. But Carolinus only laughs. He believes that all that is over with. Peter has finally found his time and his place. He's like a Goonie. So they toast to the quest, but do not see Briarg lurking outside the window. That night, while Peter and Melisande speak outside by a pool, Melisande calls him her champion, and begs him to take the talisman she wears to protect him. But their pleasant evening doesn't last long as Briarg appears. He knocks Peter down and grabs him and flies away with him. Melisande begs her father and Gorbash to do something. So Gorbash takes off in pursuit. Here, we get a twist in the tale. Briarg decides to drop Peter, let his skull be dashed on the rocks below. Gorbash dives to rescue him. At the same time, Carolinus is casting a retrieval spell. The spell hits Peter as Gorbash grabs him, and in a bright flash, Peter disappears. Gorbash comes streaking down from the sky too fast and lands in the water. We next see him on his hoard of gold, sleeping. Smeargle, Carolinus, and Melisande tending to him, trying to awaken him. When he does awaken, they are shocked to discover that Carolinus accidentally merged Peter and Gorbash. It's the dragon's body, but the man's mind in control of it. And Carolinus does not know how to separate them. This is going to take time, and time is something they don't have very much of. The next morning, Sir Oren Neville Smythe arrives. He's let in on the happenings of the night before. He is also voiced by McFadden. As they need 3 for the quest, Smeargle is enlisted, at least temporarily. In the meantime, Peter must learn to be a dragon. Lesson 1 is flying. For this, they need gemstones. For gemstones, they need to rob a dwarf mine, so they do so with a little fire and a few threats. Peter has to swallow the gemstones into his craw, like a bird with grit, and they are used to grind up the white fire rock, i.e. limestone, that they need to maintain their fires. The calcium in the limestone mixes with their stomach acid to form hydrogen, so basically, again, they work like dirigibles or hot air balloons. Peter has to understand all of this logically, though. He can't rely purely on fantasy as much as he admires dragons and fantasy. There's still that logical side to him. Peter learns how to breathe in, to lift, how to exhale, basically belch, to descend, with Smeargle getting a face full of fire in the process. It's a clever way to work the fantasy reference aspect of Dickinson's book into the cartoon. But why does it come out as fire? Well, Smeargle says, because we're dragons and we breathe fire. But it's really because they have this little igniter, a sort of a needle that produces a tiny bit of electricity, like in the, like roof of their mouth. Well, Sir Oren, meanwhile, prepares for the quest and summons Smeargle and Peter. This gives Peter a chance to practice flying. He does pretty well, but doesn't quite stick the landing. Peter, being all out of fire, now must rest the night, so they decide to make camp, and they are being watched by a wolf in the woods. What does that mean? As they talk, Sir Oren reveals that he also loves Melisande. He tells the story of how they met, which involves Gorbash. Returning from a quest, Sir Oren discovered a cache of dragon eggs. Briarg came along and started eating them, so Sir Oren attacked. We get this nice little fight scene here between the knight and the dragon, and he managed to rescue one egg, which would hatch to become Gorbash. And little Gorbash was then presented to Melisande, only 5 years old at the time, as a pet. And we get another reminder here of the problems with magic draining away. Carolinus was scrying on the trio of questers when the vision faded, just as he heard a potential danger on its way. He is reminded here that Melisande has the ability of clairvoyance. So she tries to spy what is happening in Gormley Wood, and she does perceive their danger. They are attacked by sandmerks, creatures who generally live by the seashore. Their chittering drives people insane. Oren pleads with Peter to fly away before he succumbs, but he can't fly. No fire. So he's stuck there. Now I like this bit. A clever way for Omadon to attack them. Not a brute force attack, but something that is more character driven. As they cringe and writhe, Melisande succumbs as well. Omadon flies overhead, laughing at their predicament. But now a new ally emerges. The wolf that was spying on them darts out of the woods through the sandmerks and directly at their queen. Seizing her in his mouth, they fall over a cliff. The wolf survives. The sandmerk does not. This sends the other sandmerks fleeing as the wolf howls in triumph. But back at Carolinus's, Melisande is in bad shape, stunned into unconsciousness. Carolinus cries over her. The wolf now appears in the clearing with Sir Oren and Peter. He is Arag, an old friend of Smeargle and Gorbash, who they thought was dead. Arag is voiced by the great Victor Buono in his final performance before he passed away. God bless him. We now have a talking wolf and a sleeping princess. We are in prime fairy tale territory, and this story has a very fairy tale quality to it. Now, Arag tells the story here of how he survived being dragged out to sea by a giant squid. He drowned, but Solarius, the blue wizard, revived him to help on the quest. Well, the party moves on through the woods, and at one point we see these elfin sort of people. Some of them look a little bit like Rankin-Bass's depiction of hobbits in the trees, signaling to one another of the passing of the party. These people then capture the group using a special net on the dragons that is woven with flowers that put them to sleep. They surround Sir Oren, and Arag had already been lured away by this time into the woods in search of a she-wolf protecting her cubs. Obviously, this was fake. Very good series of traps. D&D thieves should take notice of this. When it all looks bleak, arrows spring from the woods, pinning the bandits to trees. The band is presented here with Danielle of the Woodlands, a ranger type voiced by Nellie Bellflower, awesome name, who voiced Ariel in Thundar the Barbarian and who played Fonzie's ex-fiancé in an episode of Happy Days. She then takes the opportunity to introduce the leader of the bandits, the Wood Elves, as she puts it, Giles of the Treetops. He says that they thought the dragons were Omadon's raiders, which is why they attacked. Giles is also voiced by Don Messick. Now, at this point, we are informed by a voiceover from Princess Melisande, who apparently has somewhat recovered from the Sandmerks, although she seems to be sort of in a trance, that our expanded party is now only a day away from the realm of Omadon. The party arrives at the last bastion of civilization before the realm of the Red Death, Hell's Way Inn. So not quite a Holiday Inn, but maybe close. Beyond the inn is Gormley Keep, which guards the bridge into Omadon's realm, which is guarded itself by the ogre of Gormley Keep. Really evocative names here. I really like it. Within the inn, the group encounters 4 merchants from Omadon's realm. Sir Oren loudly declares, he's a little sloshed, that he doesn't like them. They leave and head straight to their master to inform him of the party's approach. The design of these dudes, very reminiscent to me, not only of Jawas, but also of the ring wraiths in Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. The innkeeper here is voiced by Jack Lester. As they all head to bed, the voiceover continues when Melisande suddenly belts up from her bed and screams. Something terrible looms over them. As we fade to commercial, we see that it is the ogre of Gormley Keep. He smashes a hole in the wall and reaches for Sir Oren. Back from the commercial, we see that the inn has been reduced to rubble. The dragons, who were in the cellar, poke their heads up through and survey the damage. The innkeeper is dead. Giles escaped capture by hiding in a pot of soup, but Oren and Danielle are captive in the keep. So we get a side quest here. Peter must now fight an ogre. Now, Smeargle gives him some tips. They have thick bones. They are mostly bone, and their flesh is fireproof. So biting and breathing fire aren't going to work. Peter pretty much has to throw this dude like over a cliff or off the walls if he's going to do anything to him. They arrive at the keep, and Peter challenges the ogre, and we get this terrific little fight between them. Peter does pretty lousy, really, to begin with. The ogre's as big as he is, and he knows, his stuff. He knows how to fight. Finally, old Smeargle gets involved, wraps his tail around the ogre's arm, and drags him nearly off the castle wall. Lightning is flashing in the sky. Smeargle is finally triumphant, but he suffers a terrible blow in the process. As he lies there in the rain, he tells Peter that he thinks something's burst in him. He thinks his heart is gone. It's a very well done scene, very touching. And Smeargle's death highlights the danger of this quest. The party moves on from the keep into the realm of the Red Death. They first encounter a stream, shallow, easily forded, but Peter's knowledge of science pays off here, and that is important. He smells that the stream is composed of acid, and it issues forth from the horrible worm of Sligoth. If chopped up, each part will regenerate, so it's a tough fight that takes brains more than brawn. Well, finally, Peter comes to the fore as the hero here. He destroys it by breathing fire into its mouth, causing it to explode and burn. It was volatile acid. In the process, he uses up all of his fire, so no more flying for the day. Melisande remains in her clairvoyant trance and sees that Omadon, he's reaching out for the party with his dark magic, a grasping hand, dark and foreboding, to rob them of their courage. And it works. All but Peter lose heart. They sit on the ground, unwilling to go further, bemoaning their fate. It is then that the Blue Wizard appears to Peter, instructing him that the shield of Saturn will protect them from Omadon's spells. Peter finds the shield and uses it to drive away the dark magic. I swear that this show is like an advertisement to get kids into old school gaming. All the elements are there. We got spells, magic items, adventuring parties, dragons, quests, monsters. It's really great. Omadon has been repulsed. How dare he? How dare he? He tells Briarg that it is his turn now. He and his legions, the flight of bewitched dragons. Demolish, devour, burn, grind them to dust. Dude, James Earl Jones is so good in this, and he goes all the way. Go forth and let death be thy destination. Doom, doom. It's just amazing stuff. A flight of dragons, I command it. A flight of dragons. And it again looks hopeless, though now the adventurers swear that they will die fighting. But Peter uses his brain again. He has Sir Orin give the flute of Olympus to Giles and tells the elf to pipe them a tune. As the dragons dive, belching fire, Giles plays. Giles, master of the flute. Order now on cassette or record. The flute casts a spell of sleep on the dragons, and they float down from the sky to snooze on the earth below. Omadon's spell is broken, but not on Briarg. He remains awake, and Peter, being a dragon himself, also sleeps. It is up to Sir Orin and the others to battle the demon dragon, Briarg. Nice fight scene in here. Orin and Giles are battered away, and Danielle scores some hits with her arrows, but is then grabbed by Briarg and dashed into the ground, apparently dead. Briarg laughs at her death as Orin holds her in his arms. Dragons are impressive things, but do not come between a courtly knight and his lady love. Sir Orin speaks an oath to his sword. It is super rad. Briarg mocks him and breathes fire. It engulfs the knight, who throws his now flaming sword into the dragon's belly, a little bit like Sleeping Beauty, ignites him, and Briarg perishes in fire. Heck yeah, it is great. The dying Orin crawls to Danielle, takes her hand. I would have lived a life with you, lassie. Great stuff, and a good indication of children's entertainment at the time and the depths that it could hit. Omadon now appears, laughing, surveying the scene of destruction. I am victorious. But then we hear Peter's voice. Not quite yet, and it is Peter's voice for sure. He is separated from Gorbash. Now how? Well, as Gorbash slept, he got to thinking that two things cannot occupy the same space. And voila, logic is perhaps stronger than magic. That breaks that spell. Omadon laughs at the idea that logic is stronger than his magic. And now we come to the final battle, Omadon versus Peter, logic versus magic. And it is really, really well done. Just completely awesome. Omadon begins to grow. He has gathered all the world's evil into himself, and dragon heads burst from his back and rain fire down onto Peter. Omadon boasts that he can do anything. He can reach up and pluck down the sun, and Peter begins with a very scientific, well, actually, calling Omadon a simpleton. You can't pluck the sun from the sky. In fact, the sun, where you're seeing it, is not where it is by the time your hand would get to it. You see, it's physics. It wouldn't work that way, and the sun is not something, that kind of stuff. Not magic, he says, mathematics, which is why antiquity chose me. You are magic, mere illusion, but I am science, logic, and the truth. Now, all right, scientists, don't get too full of yourselves. You guys do screw up plenty trying to get a hold of the truth. Well, as Peter quotes scientific facts, the dragon heads begin to disappear, and Omadon screams, and he keeps it up until Omadon turns to dust, and nothing but the red crown is left. With the evil destroyed, the landscape becomes pleasant, and the dragons and Peter's friends awaken from the nightmare. Carolinus' house descends from the sky into the magic realm. He is joined by his brother wizards. Gorbash awakens from his slumber. You know, it's your basic happy ending. But Peter is gone. In order to wield the weapon of logic, he had to deny magic. By denying magic, he had to leave the magic realm. It's a very heavy sacrifice for somebody like Peter to make, but he made it because he is a hero. And Melisande appears from the house, finally awakened. She holds Omadon's crown, and Carolinus notes that the crown must have awakened her. She says, no, not the crown. The kiss for Peter before he left appeared at her bedside and kissed her Prince Charming style. Melisande asks her father if she can join Peter in the real world, the question he feared. She may, but she cannot then return to the magic realm, except, like all people, except for the length of a dream or a flash of an inspiration. But it will survive this magic realm. Whenever man needs magic, it will be there. And Peter reappears in the pawn shop, only now he has the solid gold shield of Saturn, something that can fund his dreams. And then his dreams really come true when the door opens and Melisande enters with the red crown. And we close with the sight of Carolinus and Gorbash flying away over the rooftops of Boston. I really love this movie. Wonderful story, very beautifully rendered. I hadn't seen it in a while. I knew I wanted to do a review, and watching it over again was just great. I really loved it. The voice work is exceptional, especially James Earl Jones. Vader was not a fluke. The man could do Shakespeare, and the way he reads the lines is very Shakespearean. It's just fantastic. He goes all out on it. The heart of the story, love, sacrifice, and the idea that we do have to face reality, logic and science, can't hide from it, but alone it is insufficient and ultimately a tool that can be used for good or evil. We need magic, fantasy, dreams to survive as well. We need the lessons that we learn from these things so that we will hopefully use the power we have for good. And I think that is something very relevant to the current day. If you love old school D&D, you really should give this a watch if you haven't seen it already. If you love fairy tales, if you love that kind of cozy fantasy, you really should give this a watch. It is a beautifully animated film, great story, great voice work. Just excellent. I highly, highly recommend it. Let me know in the comments what you think about The Flight of Dragons. Love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. But until next we meet, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will hopefully see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.